Oh, pardon?
Oh, 6 o'clock.
I have 6 o'clock, so please join me in pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, good evening, everyone. We're sitting in on the April 12th meeting of the Town of Canandaigua Planning Board. Let me introduce the folks at the dais that are far right. Kim Burkert, she's our remote access facilitator, who at the last moment was able to turn things on. Good job. Next to her is our Planning Board attorney, Chris Naber, our secretary, John Robatella, Planning Board member, Scott Neal, Planning Board member, Amanda Van Laken, Planning Board member, Bob, of course. I'm Chuck Euler, I'm the chairman of the board. We have remotely Planning Board member, Mark Tolbert. He is Sean Bonchuk, the town planner, and Lance Brabant, representing our town engineers, MRB. Okay, most of you have been to our meeting, so we haven't changed anything from the way we operate. Essentially, if you want to speak to the board, if you're in the audience here, you would be recognized and come to the podium, give us your name and address, and have your say. And then if you're remotely and you want to speak, when called upon, get our attention. And once recognized, let us know who you are, where you live. And then our process as far as reviews is with each application, we'll go through the application as listed on the agenda. We will have the applicant make a presentation on what he or she is proposing. And then we'll turn to the board, ask for any comments the board may have, any questions. So it'd be an intercommunication between the applicant and the board. I will then open it up to the public for their input. And that's when I said you can be recognized and give us your name and address and say what you have to say. And then the board will deliberate. And in cases where we're ready to take action, we will take action. In other cases where we feel there's a need to continue or postpone action, we will do so formally and move on from there. I should point out there are 2 exits from the room. Should an emergency occur, please make yourself aware of where those exits are and proceed. First order of business will be the privilege of the floor. Is there anyone in the audience or remotely that would like to address the planning board regarding an issue that is not on the agenda? If so, get us your attention. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on with our agenda. Okay, this evening we have 2 new public hearings, and those public hearings were advertised in the Daily Messenger on April 5th in accordance with the local law, and so they've been duly advertised. Okay, the first application is a continued site plan from Marks Engineering representing Quinsantana Trust, owners of property at 4760 Antique Drive. And they are requesting a single stage site plan approval for a tear down and rebuild the cottage. We did look at this at our last meeting, and Sarah Linda was good enough to give us permission to extend it to tonight so that some wrinkles could be ironed out. And I think from what we hear that you were successful. So do you want to give us just an update as to where we stand?
Sure. Thank you. At our last meeting 2 weeks ago, I believe the only matter that was still of concern was the driveway. Lance in his review had identified that the driveway, because of its length and its width and difficulties with fire access, needed some work. And So we agreed to take that back to our engineers and work with Chris Jensen to come up with something that was compliant as far as he was concerned. So we've got a set of revised drawings here showing the turnaround at the end of the driveway, a widened driveway, and the turnout, which is the third item that was identified. So I believe we are in compliance. The driveway is towards the back of the circle there is going to become quite a lot more conspicuous than it is now. So it's not something we'll have to get used to, but there shouldn't be any doubt about the ability of fire trucks to get in there and do their job. So any other questions I'd be glad to answer, and Brennan is here also if there's anything about the rest of the segment.
I think as far as the board's sake, that was the primary issue, and I think what we've gotten from Chris and in collaboration with Lance, I think we're we can move forward. I don't think anything else has come up. Nothing else was changed in the plans as far as it's just a driveway. Okay. So we're looking at a revised plan dated March 31st, which shows that the improvements that Sarah Linda mentioned. And I guess I have one question. And I asked at the last meeting, easements, as far as access easements that are shared between the, I think you said it's just a loosey-goosey handshake, neighbors getting together, or is there a formal easement?
There are formal access easements for three neighbors three neighboring properties that share the driveway. The discussion we had at the last meeting was about maintenance of the road.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the most recent one of those access easements was from the late 1940s. I did read it once, and my memory is that it might say something about sharing the cost of maintenance of the road, but so yeah, there's.
Well, it's between you and the other users, I guess, as far as who's going to pay for the upgrade.
Well, we have every intention of approaching them and hoping that they will see these as an improvement for everybody and chip in. Okay, well, I think that's only fair. It's not an insignificant dollar amount.
But I do appreciate your cooperating with the board and providing that information, and I think it's to the point. I think we're ready to move forward. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. It's a type 2 seeker action. And I wouldn't mind if we bundled the seeker with the site plan approval. I'll make a motion that we approve both the type 2 seeker resolution as well, which means we have no further review under the seeker requirements, and also include in that the single stage site plan approval for the applicant, subject to we still have six conditions. Okay. And we got the watershed inspector. So yeah, I guess and still that issue to go through with the septic system, getting that resolved. Tyler,
we have an official open.
Right. I think for the most part, you handled most of MRB's concerns.
So. I mean, we haven't finished a review of the revised plan, but based on what we saw, it appeared most of the comments.
Okay, so subject to those, I make that motion for both the seeker and the site plan approval, subject to 6 conditions. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Scott. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passed. Thanks for coming back. Always good to see you. All right, we're going to move on to our public hearings. First one being CPN 22012, Marks Engineering representing ATL Contractors, owner of property 3535 State Route 364, seeking a preliminary subdivision approval to subdivide 33.18 acres into 31 single-family lots ranging from 0.46 acres to 2.74 acres. I will open the hearing, realizing that we're still in the review period for the seeker designation.
The lead agency.
So we agreed that we could go ahead and open the hearing and start discussion and get the board and the public familiar with the application. So we don't lose any time in that regard. So this evening, we'll ask the applicant to make a presentation. Lance has submitted a response or a review letter, which I think we all saw was rather extensive, very thorough. Maybe some of those issues to be discussed. Certainly we'll open it up to the public for any comments that they may have regarding the application. And then we will, and any questions from the board regarding where we stand. And then we're looking at a continuation of the hearing to a subsequent meeting once the seeker time has run out and we're ready to move forward. So depending on what happens tonight, that will determine, I guess, when the continuation would occur. And is that clear to everybody? What we're gonna do? Okay, so I'll ask the applicant, Sal, Bren, whoever is taking the lead on this.
We have a presentation.
Which number was it again?
20.
It's
2012.
Wow. So what do you want?
Down.
No, they sent a presentation at Michelle.
Yeah, I don't see it's out there. It is.
Can you check the M drive? Do you have access to M drive?
It's trying to work really hard in a lot of these graphics. It'd be a shame if we didn't get the ball.
You should not see them.
Yeah.
Go to down.
To the right.
He's on paper.
This is a challenge for me to see. So.
Yep, I know I wouldn't be able to. Projects, yep, and then go down to 12.
I can't read that from here.
It's 12, right?
Yep.
Keep going. Wait.
Up a little bit.
Here.
Right there.
There it is.
No.
No,
here.
next one.
Right there.
All right.
else.
It's but if you can you pull this over a little bit.
Just click.
Yeah, but if you go all the way to the bottom, it should be the last one.
That one?
No.
I just date sorted. There's a 4-7 right there. What's in the
Neighbor 11.
Try this one.
That one?
No. We'll try it, but I don't think
That
that's
one?
it. No. Can you guys sign in with just like a rendering with it?
We did, yes.
Yeah. If you go in back in there, there's just a single rendering color.
Access to email on my computer, forward it. I think it was sent to you, Sean.
It was, but I can't. If we switch, then the Zoom is gonna go off.
I can check to see if the rendering is in
In the file.
Yeah, right there.
that one.
Yeah. You have to use that.
All right. It's good enough.
I mean, you're gonna have time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, this is good enough.
Other graphics
And
are really
I'll
good.
make-
Okay, so I'm Sal Licciardello, attorney for the applicant for this project. You guys are familiar with me, but not familiar with this project yet. This is much more scaled down version of the residential project we had proposed before. And we're just sticking with the underlying base zoning here. At the bottom, we're all at this bottom half here. See, it's just all laid out based off the R120 zoning and setbacks. Keeping right here the steep slope area as a natural buffer. And then that will be the only portion of the project connecting the State Route 364 up the hill. We'll have an entrance coming in through County Road 18. There's a small skinny rectangle over here that has already been, we've already received preliminary approval from the town of Hopewell to put the road in, connecting it to this piece of the property in town. And we'll be doing more single family homes in Hopewell. This piece here, it's in Canandaigua. All the lots are over 1 acre. Some of them are closer to 3 acres. And it's by no means the most lots that we could have fit there, and we probably could have squeezed in a few more, but tried to preserve as much of the natural vegetation as we could without having to put in a ton of roads here. So we have 12 lots up here.
Yep.
Yeah, 12
Yes,
up there. So I
12.
thought so. And those all comply with the new scenic view shed overlay, which puts on the more stringent development guidelines. So I know when we were here with the townhome project, we had originally had County Road 18 connecting to 364. One of the larger concerns was traffic and also that big straight road we had. So that's completely eliminated now. And also with the traffic, we originally were proposing 116 units coming out with 364. Now we have 21. So it's, is that right?
19.
Or 19, sorry. So it's significantly scaled back, and we're not asking for any variances here. It's it's just a development that meets the housing need in the town without going further than what the underlying zoning allows. So I guess I'll pass it off to Brennan to get into the technical details, but if you guys have any questions for me, feel free.
I have a copy of the presentation. If you guys want to look at the pictures of it, through it. It's just the different slides. There's a few photo simulations for the view from the lake and view from the road. So I'll kind of go down through and summarize some of the key points there. Try to remember some of the numbers that are on that slides. So you like Sal said, we got 12 lots up top coming off of 18. There's additional 9 in Hopewell, which has been preliminary approved. We got 19 on the coming off 364. 20,000 square foot lots on the lower side, 1 acre lots and larger on the upper side. We're proposing 2 stormwater ponds along the north property line of the site. These stormwater ponds will drastically reduce the amount of stormwater coming off the site. So the tune of the 1 year storm, I believe, is 70%. 10 years, approximately 40, and 100 years, 40. The actual numbers are there in that presentation. So we're reducing the stormwater volume and runoff rate discharge rates from the site with those 2 large stormwater ponds. In addition, quality treatment is being provided in swales at the rear yards, front yards, side yards of these houses, and so that'll meet the DEC requirements for the treatment and detention for the stormwater. I know that was a big concern of the homeowners in the community. The reason we laid it out with 2 separate cul-de-sacs and dividing the road and not having connection straight through was that steep slope area that lies in the middle of the site. We're basically avoiding that area with any development for this project. So preserve some of the steep slopes, which is the goal of the town. It's one of the steep slopes is one of the resources identified by the town as a interest to reduce impacts. Other resources are hardwoods, which are up in the upper, the northeastern corner, which is in the upper right here. We're also protecting that and not disturbing it. Some of the other resources we've talked about in the NRI is wetlands, water bodies, and streams. We did identify a small wetland on the site, which is less than 1/10 of an acre. And we plan to get a jurisdictional determination from the Army Corps, which we haven't received yet, for that wetland to basically remove it from any wetland jurisdictions. So that's where we're still waiting on there. And I think it's a carryover from one of the previous applications also. The other NRI identified on the site was a view shed from Canandaigua Lake, which the town has actually gone a step further. You all know the scenic view shed overlay been put in place, and this project is probably one of the first to comply with that, right? So 1 acre minimum, single family residential. So then you can see some of the photo simulations from the lake and looking at it from the water, and you can see that some of the landscaping and the greenery has masked this development, so it's barely noticeable. Some of the other concerns of previous applications, and I'm just explaining this because we have a couple new board members, is the runoff coming right straight down the hill into 364. However, if you look at the cross-sectional view on one of those slides there, it's actually a 12-foot. If you get to the bottom of the hill, there's actually a 12-foot rise before it comes back up to 364. So the water, it would be nearly impossible for the water to reach 364 coming down the hill. So the water drains from this site from the south to the north to the trailer park to the north. It drains around the backside of the trailer park and then heads out to Sandy Beach after it crosses 364, which is a private driveway and private property. The reduction of the storm water will help mitigate some of the flood concerns for those people on Sandy Beach as we're reducing the flows for all storms up to the 100-year. We did receive the comments from Lance, very thorough review. We have no issues with any of the comments. We worked through them. I wish that we had a little bit more time. We would have submitted a whole new set of drawings, but that's not. I think that the schedule that we're going through this review process allows for us to go back and forth with Lance to coordinate his review and answer some of his questions, and then also get that final set of plans in front of you with enough time to look at before. I'm not going to sit here and go down line by line from Lance's letter, and I don't think it's necessary, but I do want to open it up to discussion. If the board has some of the particulars that they want to talk about or anything in general, I'd be glad to explain it. I think it covers the problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lance.
Actually,
So I guess, Brennan, you're thinking about as a result of tonight's meeting and the continuation of possibly a revised set of drawings, including Lance's and any other comments. There have been quite a few comments received. Hopewell obviously is I mean, might as well talk about that now. Hopewell has requested that that cul-de-sac up top be kept a rural character, which just means no curbing, no sidewalks, no lighting, and which I guess is in conformance with what they've conditionally approved on their section. And I to the board, I guess it makes sense for continuity. I don't think that's a big issue up there. Certainly, I think you're more concerned about what's happening down below. So I guess maybe that's one issue that we can maybe put to bed, that we feel that we agree with. Hopefully, I keep saying sure.
The one, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, one aspect to that we all know that we have to go through is we have 2 highway superintendents. So they have an agreement between the 2 of them over certain roads that are jointly connected between the 2 municipalities. Who maintains them? This would be another one of those roads that we would have to get that agreement. I bring this up only now because also the rural characteristic and whether or not it has gutters or no gutters, that's part of their review as well. So I think it's good that the board is evaluating and considering Hopewell's comments. I think ultimately though, we need to get the say of either the two Hopewell Highway Superintendent and or Jim Fletcher's review, just to make sure that they don't have an issue with going that route either.
And where is Hopewell in the process right now?
We have preliminary approval from them.
Okay.
So we've waited to submit for final to see how this side of the project goes. So we have designed that road on the upper side as a road, so it's got shoulders and road ditches and culverts versus gutters and curbs, which we see gutters down below. As far as you mentioned, since you mentioned that the sidewalks, I think we're prepared to add a sidewalk to the road and down the bottom. So
Perfect. I know that one.
Next.
Keep going, Brent.
Board members, questions?
Brendan answered one of mine on the sidewalks. That's excellent. We talked a lot about that in the last one. Perfect. Will you do another traffic study, or do you think that's needed? Or
in this case, the traffic study is definitely not warranted for the Department of Transportation connection on 364. There's no through connection, and there will definitely be less than 150 cars entering the highway at that intersection, so it does not warrant it by the DOT standards.
okay.
I think your engineer's report had an update on the traffic.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. We did update our counts to just give a preliminary, or not, give a number on magnitude for the entering exit.
If I may, have you reached back out to DOT in regards to this project, or?
You have a letter from Greg.
But this one is, I think, in response to our seeker. And
Yes.
it's kind of, I'm not speaking for DOT, but it seemed very like a template,
Generic.
Yes.
you know, where they just kind of state some of the obvious things that I think we're aware of. I just didn't know if you've
No,
had
we
a
have
chance to reach out.
not. We've met
Okay.
tagged with DOT. The last conversation we had in the previous application is that they would allow for an intersection
Yeah.
onto their state highway. That was their gist of their concept review.
Sure.
We haven't gone back to them,
Okay.
but we certainly will through the process.
Thank you.
Brandon, one other question, not a question, kind of a comment, but some of your renderings in the past haven't matched all the time. I just caution, like that rendering right there, I really like because there's trees blocking houses and there's no trees blocking houses in that rendering, and there's none on the plans. So just try to match what you're showing us there in the plans, because that right there looks good. They're hiding the houses up on the shoreline. So just keep that.
Probably in the view from the lake too.
Yeah, so they're just,
Oh, you got it.
yeah, it looks good there, but not on the plan. So those always kind of never matched for me.
It's an artistic rendering.
Yeah, I understand.
An artistic visualization of the site might look like, right? So
Yeah.
we've got to get those artists in line, right?
Yeah, I can just add, that's why I didn't really want to use that rendering, because was really there to show the lot setback lines. So the rendering shows it all clear cut grass, and that's not going to be the case. We install the utilities and roads, and we'll cut down what we have to put the road bed in and get the sewer and water in,
Yep.
but ultimately that'll be the homeowner, the end consumer's decision on, how many trees they want to
We
take
can
down.
do another job on that.
So,
Yeah,
but I
especially
I
the
agree
shoreline.
though that it is confusing at times.
Yeah.
We definitely want to have more trees.
But the plans, the plans will ultimately show what we call the clearing limits and what's going to be remain and what's going to be removed, so that we have a good understanding of what vegetation trees will remain on the site.
Are you guys gonna be the builder also
For the houses.
for the house?
I believe, so not necessarily.
Okay.
If someone comes in and wants to buy a lot and they have their own builder, then that's fine. But we definitely are open to building if someone wants us to. It's not like a Ryan Home thing where they just throw up a bunch of homes.
Yeah.
It's more of a custom, case by case basis.
Oh, yeah.
Just for my, so there is no connecting road between the two
Correct.
at all? No, nothing connected to it.
That's correct.
Just to point out, one of the items that they were dealing with was the town has a requirement for 1,000-foot cul-de-sac, so you can't extend a road beyond 1,000 feet. And they had to deal with emergency access, which is fire code that says over 30 homes off of a dead end road, nothing more than that. So they've provided a plan that demonstrates compliance with that code.
Back to the toll wall thing, is there was one thing they did talk about, I think, where they really didn't want the through pass road. But then and in the end, they accepted it with, well, they accepted the preliminary approval on their side, and they still think it connected through. But that's a bonus to them, I think. If you talk to the Ontario County planner, he's very against it. You would like to see that connect through because there's not a lot of cross roads within the main routes in Canandaigua.
Well, this stays out of the steep slopes entirely.
That was the biggest reason that pushed us to it. So just avoid that steep slope section. It was a big issue that was talked about several times, so.
So then with the steep slopes, then lots on both, I guess, the left and the right, west and east, will have portions of the steep slopes kind of that butt up, will have portions of that within their lot. So they would be, the homeowners would be responsible for maintenance, and they, can't clear cut any of that in future, and that won't be an issue.
So I was gonna say, in the past, when the board had a concern with, we'll call it tree clearing or view shed, they've put or required a conservation easement to be provided over it as the protective mechanism to do it.
You said the two magic
If it's on their lot with no easement or protection,
right,
it's likely that they'll have the ability to do what they want with that property.
Okay.
Well, subject to the steep slope code protection.
Correct, thank you.
In the town code.
At this point, we have not proposed any conservation or these restrictions for those areas. So.
I would suggest that you do make.
So let's let the discussion start.
My understanding is someone couldn't cut down trees in the steep slope. If it's like in the NRI, they would have to come to the board to get.
I think that's what Chris was.
Yeah, so
Like
we can.
hypothetically, yes, but we see it
Right.
all the time.
Right.
Don't put us in the tree business.
No, I don't
But we
want
do,
to
we see them
put more
being
burden.
taken
See it
down
at
all the
Fox
time.
Ridge.
Yeah.
And it would, it would be just those are deep lots. It'd be the very tail,
Right.
Very back end. It would, I would think it would have an impact on the marketability or usability of the lot. Except that the homeowner probably can't put a shed at the very back of their lot, but they're not going to be able to anyway because it's a steep slope. So.
Plus their shed would be like this.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a very useful shed. They could make a cave probably.
The other side of this conversation is the enforcement, and that Chris Jensen really is reluctant to be able to enforce on these conservation areas. And I'm not speaking for Chris, but I've heard this in discussion before, that it's private property.
But we'll get complaints because neighbors are really vigilant about what trees are taken down.
So
Especially.
I think
we do.
Lakeview, there might not be one.
Right.
something we can consider for sure.
It may be, well, we'll have to discuss a deed restriction or conservation easement for town. There's also the steep slope section. We can make it very clear that it's just the very back of the lot in Moulton Bridge. I think that's something that the planning board wants to do.
Like any other encumbrance on the property, it's just restricted.
Like
Can't
the
do certain
utility
things back there,
easements.
yeah. Okay, well, we'll think about that. Yep. Good point though. Yeah.
It's not HOA land, right? That's the tail of the lots.
We've yet to talk about.
We haven't
that.
talked about it yet.
Scott, do you got anything else? Or Amanda, I'm sorry.
Just
I know, Mark, you're gonna have a couple comments, so
Yeah.
pull on you. Yes, Amanda.
yes, just one, if we know at this time any price point estimates of the proposed homes or whatever we can get.
I'll let
If
the owner.
It's impossible in this economy
Yeah.
Things keep going the way they're going, and it'll probably be $3 million.
But yeah,
Not
Wish I had a crystal
Not
ball.
at this time,
We
understood.
have 2,000 feet of road to pay for, right? So.
Understood. All right, that was my last question. And Mark, I know you had a couple, so I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, great, thanks. I think, first off, how is the ridgeline development area determined? Is it just basing it on where it hits a steep slope, or was it that scenic view shed determined from some other manner?
It's based on the map that we have, which is as good as we're gonna get right now, but actually they've extended it beyond what they needed to.
Yeah, I don't know how to show it, but
It's a town adopted map, though,
It's a-
right?
Absolutely adopted map. It's just a little, once you dig in and zero in, it gets a little pixely.
we
So you guys went beyond
we
it.
actually probably some of these lower lots here,
The purple.
they actually probably could have been not considered a scenic view shed lot, but we've drawn the line down the center, and that makes a pretty clear delineation for us. But if you look at the
map.
map,
Yeah.
it's actually further up the hill.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I did reading the scenic view shed pieces again today, and it talks about choosing common public viewing areas to depict that area as well. And that's why I was just curious as to what might have been chosen. Because once it does go into the scenic view shed component, there's quite a few things that goes into what's happening with the plan and the vegetation related to it. So to identify what clear cutting could be allowed, looking at any trees that are greater than 6 inches and identifying those trees on the plans, having architectural plans and renderings tied to those, revegetation plans, anything that comes out of it, and then the minimums that go into what's the maximum and minimums of what can be cleared on the lot. So has there been consideration to those points from that scenic view shed?
The consideration to architectural plans, I guess, and revegetation in trees larger than 6 inch. That's the consideration of those. We're mostly complying with the 1 acre lots. We don't have architectural renderings of the houses at this point. It's going to be up to the builder to decide. And
You haven't, sorry, Mark, you have not delineated on the plans all those trees that are over 6 inches or not in that area.
no.
the land was clear cut back in like the 60s, I think it was, when it was a farm back then. So I doubt there's many old trees back there. Just
It's mostly scrub brush. I can't tell you like right now.
And you submitted a landscape plan
We submitted a landscape plan for revegetation, yes.
and all that, so
Yes,
if anything, it's probably gonna be better than lower in terms
yes,
of vegetation,
that's correct.
vertical vegetation.
Yeah, well, there's gonna be nice deciduous trees versus scrub brush and hawthorn.
Anything else, Mark?
Well, and picking up with Amanda's question, has it been thought of as any minimum square footage
Of the
for the
home,
development? Yeah.
Well, town is a standard of 1,200 square feet, right?
As long as it fit on the
That's
lot.
the minimum.
Yeah, as long as it's in setback.
And then the setbacks of the property and the constraints of the property will set the maximum allowable.
And from a phasing perspective, is there a sense as to what you expect the phasing to be? Because if I understand correctly, the things like the sewer connections and water connections are coming from the bottom up. Is there a thought on how that phasing would go?
We've got sections delineated on the subdivision plat in the plans. We will start at section 1 coming up from 364, moving on to the end of that cul-de-sac in section 2. The discussion is coming up the hill with utilities through 3 to start 4 and then come back down and finish 3.
Are the utilities going over the hill?
The sewer is the only thing that connects through the hill.
Oh, sewer.
Is the only connection. Oh, sorry, sewer and water, I'm sorry. Water comes up, water comes up just to the top side of the cul-de-sac from Canandaigua, and then the last 4 lots do not have public water that will be serviced by a private well.
And the 1 acre lots are on site? They're on site septic.
No, they
Oh,
are
you
all
got-
the sewer will
Oh,
all.
okay.
It's all
The
sewer.
original plan had them.
Yes.
Awesome.
How would that relate in combination to the development happening in Hopewell? How would that phase in?
Hopewell would, the connection to 18 would have to come down from Hopewell before they could develop any of these houses on the upper portion.
Got it. And that's on the Hopewell side, including the area in Canandaigua, that's intended to be a private drive or a private roadway. I know there's different terminology there, and maybe Lance, you can help with that. But that's intended to be private and not a dedicated.
It's all going to be dedicated road from 364 and down from 18 to the cul-de-sacs. There's two private driveways proposed, yes.
But so the area, on the east side of it, so the upper 12 lots, that would be dedicated roadway up there?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Mark, the question is to dedicate it to whom? So we have to decide whether or not it's gonna be dedicated to Canandaigua and Canandaigua will maintain it,
Right.
or Hopewell. That's part of the process that we have to iron out.
Okay.
Dedicated to Hopewell.
It's not in Hopewell.
What, the Canandaigua portion?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, no, correct, but
But I also.
I'm sorry, I meant the maintenance.
Canandaigua can maintain it efficiently.
yeah, I meant the maintenance, I
So
apologize.
as part of this, you'll be expected to essentially broker a maintenance agreement with the town of Hopewell on Canandaigua's behalf. I don't know exactly what.
Well, they have the highway superintendents have a maintenance agreement between local roads that are
We're
jointly.
mostly talking about snow plowing. There's no reason why Canandaigua can't fix the asphalt over here, right? But it's mostly snow plowing, right? So logistically,
Whatever their agreement says.
they usually plow every other road anyways between the two towns. So.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I want to just, I mean, as part of preliminary approval, before preliminary approval.
we'll have to have that.
We gotta have both highway superintendents say the existing agreement is adequate for this.
Right, or does it need to be something new?
These people,
Okay,
we
yeah,
got
we can-
taxes in the town of Canandaigua.
I'll get Jim and Matt and say, well,
That's easy.
A question also came up on the upper part of the Canandaigua portion, the way the road terminates and to that turnaround or whatever happens on the Gorham town line. Was there a reason for that type of termination? Or, because it looks like it could continue through at some point in the future, or is that just a turnaround there?
it's just a turnaround. It meets the standards for the fire apparatus turnaround. That's why it looks so large.
Yeah.
There's no intentions though
No.
currently for a future.
No connection to it.
And then maintenance on the stormwater retention, long-term, what's the expectation for that?
The stormwater ponds at this point are gonna be held on private property for lots 24 and 6, I believe I'm right, 6. So they'll be held privately by those owners of those lots. Which the maintenance agreement will go with the facility, will be reported with the town, and will be required to maintain it. The town's like,
So that would transfer to those owners then at that point.
that's,
Mark, that is what the applicants
That's
proposed.
the proposal at this point.
Whether it winds up that way, that's
Yeah.
one of the big nuts here. Yeah.
Gotcha.
That
Okay.
doesn't tend to work.
Right.
Unless you've got some great solution.
Yeah,
For the
some
very
creative
obvious problems, I don't think the planning board's gonna be able to allow that. We can come up with a good solution.
Right, well, we were thinking we'd have that be a deed restriction that all the, standards that they have to maintain, you can't cut it, below a certain height, it can't get above a certain height. They would all run with the land. And there would be repercussions in there that, if it's not met, Canandaigua or whoever could
that's
build
in the maintenance agreement anyways.
where it
The
would be in
town
the
of
maintenance
Canandaigua.
agreement.
There will be an easement over to the town can go in there and modify and maintain it if the owner does not.
How does it work?
Well, right,
Of course, right.
The town doesn't want a drainage district either.
Who pays for the, digging it out every? That's.
This would be easily solved, if the town was accepting more drainage districts, but they're not.
Oh, okay, let's just do,
Well, no, the town doesn't want to maintain ponds.
Right.
So in the past, if there was a scenario where the town had to maintain it, typically we would ask that the ponds be placed on their own lots because it's easier for the towns to go in, maintain them. They don't have to worry about easements and going on private property. the town hasn't recently, in the last 10 years that I'm aware of, have taken ponds either on private property by via easement or on their own parcels, unless it was a commercial.
We
or-
took one.
I think it was
Oh, no,
one.
we didn't take that one.
I don't think we have.
Take that.
So it's definitely a question that internally is being discussed about what our options are.
So you're not proposing an HOA, Travis?
We were not. I know that would be a solution. But
Yes.
then again, there, if the HOA fails to maintain it, then, the town would have to, take actions to get the HOA to maintain it or maintain it themselves and then bill out the HOA. Obviously, I know you probably would be better to go after a group of homeowners instead of one single homeowner.
Is that true?
I don't know, but is it?
It would be easier to go
Right.
after one person than a group of
No.
people.
Unless you have like, right, if there's some.
It would be
that finds the
recorded
property
under
and
that
then
property that they have to maintain that pond.
What happens when that person leaves?
The town steps in, right?
So those are the things that have to be.
Yeah, we gotta figure it out. I don't see it as a prohibitive problem. It's
Well,
figure it out.
It's only a potential change in the plans if it goes on its own lot, because that would change the number of lots that you're probably proposing due to the lot size requirement. So it's something that I think needs to have some dialogue on to make a determination if that's not an option. Because if that's not an option, then
Yeah.
we'll have to figure out some alternative. Because I'm pretty sure the town is not gonna accept it via easement. If the town was to maintain it, that's not what you said, I understand that, but
Right,
if-
that would be,
I'm pretty sure though, if that was the option in lieu of this, then the town wouldn't take this. But that's a hurdle. It's something that I think should begin dialogue and kind of come up with what our options are.
And there's a way to post it security or
Chat
something.
message. You're getting a chat message from Mary.
We'll figure something.
You could bond up on the maintenance on it.
Yeah. And just load it with deed restrictions. Like, I guess, if you have I'm not proposing, I'm not
Oh.
recommending that you have an HOA, but if you have an HOA, then everybody chips in essentially for the
Right.
maintenance.
Just say the chance.
right.
No,
That's also-
it doesn't cost anything to have a pond on your lot, except every 10 years or so when you gotta go get an excavator and dig it out. And have it inspected. At which point those two lot owners are gonna say, what the heck? I'm taking everybody's stormwater and I'm the only one.
Right,
I guess it wouldn't be any different though if you had a drainage system that was already on your property, privately held. You have to maintain riparian rights, right?
Splitting it up.
But regardless, I think it's easier for a private owner of the property to be more interested in that pond and maintaining it, keeping it up versus a HOA.
But I tend to agree. I think that's something that would affect the marketability of that specific
Oh, yeah.
property where, it might take you 3 times as long to find a buyer for it when, you walk them through the home and say, hey, just so you know, here's this laundry list of restrictions you have to comply with on this pond. If you don't do it, you're gonna get fined. Here are your obligations. And there's some people who, they see that as an asset, is, oh, I have a pond on my property.
Nobody
That's a
out there
good
cutting
thing.
the cattails out of it,
Right, and then, they
But
versus appreciate it.
Yeah.
But, obviously, and so I don't think you get a situation where you have a party who doesn't want to take care of the pond buying that property, because it would be readily apparent to them that they're assuming that the responsibility when they buy the property. And they would be fully informed of the repercussions if they fail to do so. And,
Well, Sal, could you come up with suggestions as to
yeah,
type of language and we'll run it by
Yeah.
Chris,
sure.
and between now and the next
Talk
meeting.
to Jim and Chris, who's the MS4 official too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't,
Says he's gonna send her.
yeah, Chris Jensen should.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've looked up ours and haven't.
Right, and we could explore the, whoever buys that property, having to put up some sort of bond that would kind of,
I think there's an easier way. I think
Okay.
we could come, I think that's gonna
yeah, I
cause
agree.
problems.
You wouldn't, if you had a pond on your property, you wouldn't bond it, like I have a pond on my property, I don't bond that.
To maintain it?
Yeah,
Right.
Is it a stormwater management plan?
One could argue that it is.
Every pond is.
Yes, but we're not arguing.
Okay.
We need to-
Yeah, but it's not controlling.
No,
No, I understand.
We'll send Chris out to take a look at your pond.
Come on.
The other issue, just to be aware of, we're gonna need some shared use agreements for those three, like, the six, I guess, houses on private
Private
drives.
drives.
Yes, that's the other thing.
Lock them up, lock it
Did you submit
down.
those? Yeah, we did submit.
We
some
sent
drafts.
this agreement, but we can coordinate that to Chris.
No, you don't have to, I just make sure they say, I mean, eventually.
But
let's take a look at it.
yeah, it would be, when we get to that point in the process,
Yeah.
it would have to go to you.
Yeah, eventually, but just make sure that building them, repairing them, maintaining them is, who's covering the cost, it's really spelled out.
Yeah, and I think I had a chance to go to the Hopewell meeting, and Lance, you were there as well. I think the general impression from Hopewell is that they're considering this being a private access again. So as we consider what the desire and hope is on the upper part of the Canandaigua parcel, even as we match that to the look and feel of that rural community up there, understanding the impact of if Hopewell approves it at a private or whatever the technical term is, and then we do something different of the issues that might go into that as well, because then you'd need a similar type of an agreement for the rest of the parcels as you would for those six, wouldn't you, at that point?
Yeah, so
Yes.
I just,
Yeah.
so just to make sure because I think you're saying a couple of things, Mark, and I don't think you're incorrect, only just in the fact that the town of Hopewell, 9 lots are shown as a dedicated roadway to the town of Hopewell. That is part of the preliminary approval. That's what was submitted to the town as part of the original Canandaigua Shores application.
Okay.
As proposed now with this project, it's also being proposed that the extension of that road is to be dedicated. In this case, dedicated to the town of Canandaigua, because it's in town of Canandaigua. I misspoke earlier on that. But there would be a maintenance agreement, which is I think what you're
Between the two.
talking about,
Yep.
between the two townships about who maintains it, how it gets maintained, who's responsible for what and what.
Right. Okay. And the same would have to be, I think that was a question that Hopewell brought up related to schools and things as well, correct?
Yes, we did coordinate with the school district as part of the lead agency coordination packages. I don't believe we received any input from them as of yet. They still have technically till Friday to provide that information. But yes, we did consider their opinions and forwarded the information.
Is this whole project both towns in Canandaigua?
Yeah, the Hopewell piece is also in the Canandaigua City School.
And I think in looking at when you look at the divide, I mean, it's going to be interesting because I'm assuming that when we talked about complete streets in the past, we'd look at something that was more complete streets on the lower half and then the rural connection on the upper half. Any intended connections for walking trails or anything like that? I mean, I guess it'd probably be a little bit harder to do because you're going through private property at that point.
No intended connections, no.
No trails, no internal connections of any kind.
Just utilities.
How many utilities, what utilities have to make the trek from down below the
Sewer and water, sorry. Water.
So you're gonna be cutting up that steep slope down this.
Yeah, water comes to this line here. Sewer comes up through here. I believe water comes up through here. I might have those reversed.
And there'll be
No,
subject
I think you're right. And then sewer goes all the way up into Hopewell.
So there will be some disturbance in construction of sewer line.
Yeah.
Possibly gas and electric as well.
That's a good point. You won't know that answer till later on.
No, they pick their own way.
Okay. Just, minimal disturbance in that steep slope, I guess, for utilities.
Public utilities, one of the things that's listed as
There's a
with
lot of
action on
those.
steep slopes.
So
Given care.
Given care, correct.
going back to the mapping of the trees, doesn't sound like there's a ton of trees. It also doesn't sound like there's a ton of disturbed area. Or need to see a full layout of every tree or just the disturbed areas. If they're gonna have to clear cut a section.
No, I think you're mixing the 6-inch trees he was referring to as a scenic view shed overlay. So that would be the disturbed area, which is everything above on the upper side of the site.
Wait.
That was, he was bringing that out of the SVO guidelines.
So everything up top, right?
Oh,
Yeah, that's right. That was coming out of the scenic view shed guidelines. I mean, there's a number of items in there that talk about tree size, talk about clear cutting, talks about revegetation. There's a number of items.
Our surveyors are not going to go out there and shoot every 6-inch tree unless they're, I cattle prod them out there. But anyways, it's going to be very difficult to shoot every 6-inch tree. So I'd ask the board if that's actually necessary or not.
I think if we're going to enforce a ridgeline development guideline and a scenic view shed, then we should enforce the guideline.
If it's a loop view shed, which is only the top part, porch coat, not the bottom part.
Is there trees, and so just to make sure I understand, the existing tree cover in the view shed area, does it go all the way across all of this? Is it fully
Yes,
vegetated?
it's all vegetated.
I mean, it was only in the past like 50, 60 years.
It was so cheap.
It was a farm before then, so, you know, basically a farm that got overgrown, so.
But the hardwoods are only up in the one
And that
corner.
Right, definitely.
I mean, the hardwoods are in the NRI.
Yeah. We've identified these are hardwoods, old growth hardwoods here in this corner.
And they won't be touched.
No.
Whether they're 6-inch or.
Might have a couple tree stands
Would it-
back there, but that's.
I mean, we could, as a supplement or alternative to that, maybe we can offer to the board to walk the site to review the trees that are on there to see what they may want to save for the
I'm
SVO.
gonna do that.
You could do that all separately. So we don't have. to-
That would be fine.
Or in groups of two.
State of
You
the
have a
outside.
partner. buddy.
Well, fortunately, they're big lots, so I mean, you do, in your construction of the homes, you have room to leave trees up. It's not like you have to clear cut into the homes. So I think, you know, with the careful surgical procedures, you could put those houses in, and I guess you figure the trees are, in some cases, are an asset, right? Up top.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Then I think once we sell the lot, whoever wants to build there will come back to this board and say, hey, I own lot number 17 in this subdivision. This is the house I want to build. And then you guys will know exactly where they're proposing the location. You can say, okay, we want you to stay away from this group of trees. And I think that would be more appropriate to deal with the end, you know, home builder.
I don't think they'll have to come back
No.
to this
No,
board.
they don't. All right, well,
Like that, yeah.
if it's,
Well,
even
we
if
go
it's
to-
in the scenic view
You
shed
go to
overlay.
building permit. I think as long as we designate on the plans, then the building, the code enforcement officer knows
Well, then,
where our concern would be.
yeah, even better. That's my point is I don't know if that's an appropriate.
Well,
inquiry.
again, we don't have to solve it tonight.
And
But these
just to be clear, the board has gotten a little indication on what their desires are, but the board reserves its rights to change.
Yeah, and I,
Individual
again,
mind.
as an alternative to that, because we're not planning on going out there to shoot every tree on the property, is to offer to the board to be able to walk the site to pick out areas that may have be interest to salvage.
Appreciate the offer. Anybody else from the board? I will go to the public. Any of our public participants like to address the board regarding this application? Yes, sir. Could you give us your name and address?
Michael Maxwell, 3600 East Lake Road.
Hi, Mike.
And I'm a neighbor and participating with Touchant Point residents in that area. I have some questions, and I haven't read all the documentation, so If the answers are there, feel free to direct me to those. Some ones that come up in observing the presentation. The barrier between the two areas that's going to be maintained, the steep slope area. Who is going to maintain that?
Yes.
homeowners.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So public hearing, you're gonna ask the board or direct comments to the board. The board will determine if there needs to be a question answered to them, but typically this is an opportunity for the public to ask the questions, and then during the review period, we will definitely answer this question. But to your point, that was one of the questions that was discussed earlier, was how is that steep slope area, vegetated area going to be maintained?
Okay. And just personal experience on private property, and particularly this year with all the wind,
right? Things
do change from what we view it now. And there will be HOAs, as I understand it.
No.
That's the question.
Question.
Currently,
okay.
no.
With regards to stability on, if there is an HOA, typically those are corporations, and they can go bankrupt. The pond maintenance you're proposing, it would seem to be a rather gnarly issue in the discussions that I've had here. And while there may be some solution of assigning it to an individual home owner or to a particular lot, and that may be great for the first purchase, but it could become more problematic, and we need to think through that for subsequent purchases and also for inheritance issues, where the new subsequent person may not be quite as interested as the initial buyer relative to maintenance. Those are my questions for to consider.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thanks. Anyone else either in the room or see a hand? No, I'm. Someone join us via Zoom. Yeah. Mary. You have the floor, Mary.
All right, questions.
Do you have to say who you are?
I'm James Marigold. I live at 3512 Sandy Beach and 3520 East Lake Road. The size of the two ponds, why is the larger one on the top of the hill and the smaller one on the bottom? It should be the other way around, considering that the outlet for this entire property is right next to the lower pond. Can somebody explain that to me, first of all?
One deeper in the other.
So this is the public comment. It's not an explanation, the board will.
Okay, then all right, then fine. Then my comment is, I think it's a mistake to put the larger one at top and put a smaller one at the bottom where more water is going to collect and you have more houses, which is going to direct more water in that direction before it goes into that creek and goes down to the lake.
Anything else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
What are you doing as far as runoff of the houses? Yes, you're putting gutters in, but where is that water going when it goes down the downspout?
Can't ask a question.
What is the game plan for that?
Okay. Anything else?
For right now, I also think that you need to make sure that you have a management agreement for that ridge line. I don't think that should be left to the public to decide whether they're going to cut trees down or not. I think that it needs to be a written agreement saying that those trees cannot be touched. That's about it, I guess, for right now.
Good questions. Thank you. Anyone else?
I think Ms. Naomi will speak.
She's here. Naomi, do you want to join us?
Not yet. I have a lot to say when you talk about Brickyard Road.
Oh. All righty. Anyone else regarding this application? Okay, well, anybody else on the board have any comments before we continue? Okay, so I guess to sort of wrap things up, you're going to take Lance's comments, you're going to take the comments heard this evening. Sal, you're going to work at some of the legal aspects of how we can protect both the steep slopes as well as the maintenance of the ponds, the issues on that. And regarding the private driveways, how did you want that handled, Chris?
I didn't realize that you guys had already submitted something.
Okay.
Before I take a look at them, just make sure they cover, you know, who's gonna do what and who's gonna pay for what and how it's managed. You know, it's essentially, the way I look at these is essentially you gotta create a mini HOA. You know, this is how we make decisions. Maybe that's what it already is.
Chris, does our code address private driveways at all? That's no problem.
Not to recollection, but
not a private road, private driveway. Sharing, you know, common drive.
The planning board addresses them by making sure they have good shared access and shared use agreements to say this is who pays for what and this is how we make decisions. In my past, I've been familiar with cases where good friendly neighbors have become enemies over common driveways. Yeah, you ask somebody to pay for tear out asphalt when they don't feel like doing it. Man, that's
yeah. And the guy lives at the end, the guy at the front's having a party, and the guy at the back wants to get his driveway, and he can't get. I mean, it's something that's really got to be tied down.
At the same time, I've seen, you know, entire neighborhoods plowed by the one guy who has a pickup truck with a snowplow on it for, you know, decades, and nobody ever.
So we got to see that language too, and I guess, you know, we'll get make sure we're comfortable with how that's going to be addressed. So, anything else that we want from the applicant regarding future plans?
It's just a proposal on the ponds, you know, something in writing that the board can, you know, rely on. I think one of the speakers brought it up that it's not the first house you sell, it's the, you know, people after that and after that and after that.
Right.
And that's what the board has to be concerned with. So just a, you know, maybe a one pager summarizing, you know, there'll be deed restrictions saying this, or some sort of a shared. They come up with some good ideas.
I could see that declaration actually on the plan. Whatever maintenance.
But I think it also wanted to have it in the deed.
Oh yeah, definitely. Part of the deed.
Yeah, we wanted to run with the land for perpetuity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not buyer beware, but you know, future owners will have to realize what they're responsible for.
I think we would want to follow that similar language from the scenic viewshed items as well, wouldn't we? Where it talks the specifics of the minimum lot size, minimum clearing areas, and everything tied into that scenic viewshed requirement.
Town code, right?
That's the town code, right?
Yeah, anyway.
It's in code now.
You can make the whole code part.
It's in the code.
No, not as. Mark, what do you want that? What? I'm sorry. Can you
Well,
specify?
I mean, so we seem there's a number of requirements that go into the scenic viewshed document that states that as they're doing certain things, our expectation is that they outline that on drawings and so forth. What's happening, what seems to be happening here is that we're trying to transfer that from the developer who wants to subdivide to the individual that buys that piece of property. I mean, that's what I'm just hearing, and that's an opinion. So if that's happening, then we should expect that we should expect that information have to transfer as well. So if there's a responsibility to identify trees that are to be kept, then that needs to transfer. If there's a responsibility that says we can't touch more than 1/4 acre on 1 acre, then that should transfer. I would think that would be the same responsibilities that we're trying to transfer on the ponds related to the view shed requirement should happen as well, shouldn't it? We have. I don't think we've touched a lot of the scenic view shed requirements yet. It's relatively new. And I'm new to the board too, so I certainly haven't touched it. So I apologize if I'm asking for a little bit of education at the same point.
No, I think, Mark, I think that's a very good question.
I got a kind of a solution. Well, go ahead.
Let me just, well, okay, you got a solution.
It is prior to issuance of a building permit that the planning board chairman has the opportunity to review the building plans architecturally for a building permit.
Before a building permit?
Because because we're not providing architectural plans for us, right?
Not till the time of building.
Right, so the owner selects what they're gonna build.
Which changes inevitably.
Code enforcement officer.
So.
Yeah, I was thinking the code enforcement officer.
Right, he'll know which areas
I
are.
think you
We
can make sure.
absolutely capable of doing
Yeah, he's really,
Well, that's why that's why I was offering it up to the chairman.
I think that's a great idea.
Because the chairman of the planning board knows what the intent of the SVO, right?
Well, and the staff does too.
Yeah, we do.
You know, they probably know it better than I do.
Okay,
But we
there you
do.
go.
So I would, I would rely on the CEO and the town planner.
Okay,
You
great.
review that, okay? You modified your. Okay, I think we're ready to move on and continue this discussion on this application. Let's pick a date, folks.
We also talked,
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
we talked about resubmission if it was possible by April 26th. Can you do that?
Yes.
submit by April.
No,
25th.
no. Into our office that date. It happens to be planning board date, but for
Yeah.
review on
May
May
10th.
10th. Would that work?
Yeah, I think that would be just fine. I can be sure of that is what I was thinking.
Well, that's
20th.
not gonna give us,
28,
May 10th.
I
the
think
18th, they can give it to you, right?
that's next week.
We have a lot of them. But it's not gonna give last time to review it.
But I think that the reason for the May 10th date, and
That's fine.
I'm just pointing out to the board, is that to give the board time, staff time to incorporate, to give time for it to be available to the public, which is what we're
That would make
continuing the
sense.
meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Comments.
Yeah, we talked about this.
I think that's the reason for the May
Yes.
10th date.
Yes.
And that's our policy regarding resubmitted plans. It's first
Yeah.
meeting of the month.
Right, and April 26th would give us enough time if you guys were able to accommodate that.
All right, well, let's, can someone give me a motion to continue the hearing till May 10th?
I'll move that we. Let's see, move the public hearing, continuation of the public hearing to the May 10th meeting.
Okay.
Second.
And the seconded, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. What will we do?
I don't think the bond issue is, but I don't think you have to redesign.
Because
Well,
that
because there's already
Come up with a way to.
Like
people have had their.
I'm gonna give you a call.
Yeah, not tomorrow, I'm very tired.
Yeah, no, I was thinking like.
All righty, our next public hearing is CPN 22017, BME Associates representing Christine.
Morning, guys.
Owners of property 32, 15, 32, 17, 32, 19, all the way through to 32, 27 East Cedar Bush. And they want to amend their subdivision and get site plan approval for 7 existing lots, amending it down to 4 lots. Sir.
Good evening, I'm Ryan Destro from BME Associates. Here with me tonight is Chris Iverson from Chrysanthemum Incorporated. As mentioned, We are here tonight seeking approval to modify a previously approved subdivision and site plan for phase 3. Phase 3 on this exhibit is in the upper left corner, the northwest portion of the property, representing the lots right here. Phase 3 was filed with the Ontario County Clerk's Office in 1985 for 7 lots. It represents the final phase of development approved currently for the Quail Bush development. And since the approval in 1985, no development has commenced within the phase 3 area. Based on current market demands, we're looking to reduce it from 7 lots to 4 lots to eliminate the middle units, which are not really as popular. It should be noted that in 2012, the town of Canandaigua did approve a similar modification to phase 2. Phase 2 used to be 7 lots, just like phase 3. And then these, at that point in 2012, they were re-subdivided into 4 lots. Therefore, we're seeking for just a similar re-subdivision from 7 lots to 4 in phase 3, which was previously done in phase 2. Access to phase 3 will just be a continuation of the loop for Cedar Bush Drive, which currently terminates at this point here, as well as over here. So we'll complete the loop for phase 3. With regard to utilities, sanitary sewer is already installed on site, public gravity sanitary sewer. The 4 new units will just require new sanitary laterals. Public water main exists on site. We just need an extension from phase 2 beyond the rear of the proposed phase 3 lots. The water main alignment for all 3 phases for Chrysanthus involvement was previously approved by the town of Canandaigua as well as the health department. With regards to stormwater management, there is existing on-site stormwater management facilities, and the project does currently have active New York State speedies, general permit coverage for discharges from construction activity. We did receive comments from MRB as well as the town water department on April 6th. We also submitted a letter responding to their comments. On April 11th, we do not see any issues in addressing the town water department comments or MRB's comments. And a couple of miscellaneous items to bring up. It was requested that an updated SWIP be provided. Currently, there's an open SWIP for the active general permit for phase 2. We've incorporated the phase 3 plans into that SWIP and provided it to MRB. And then also another request for this project was that a stormwater maintenance agreement be enacted. This project in its creation predated the town's designation as both an MS4 and then the town's requirements for a stormwater maintenance agreement. So the Quail Bush Homeowners Association has submitted a stormwater maintenance agreement to the town board for acceptance. So that's the general overview. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
I went over and looked at your property the other day. The only question I had is it's up higher than the other ones. What are you going to do with that drainage to make sure it doesn't go down into that other area?
Yeah, so we have a couple of things. Those units are all proposed to be, the downspouts are all supposed to be tied into a downspout collector system, and then we have a rear yard storm lateral to connect into the existing storm sewer system. And then there's also a swale at the bottom of, or at the rear of the phase 2 lots at the base of the slope from the phase 3 lots. And that is routed around to inlets on the private drive for Cedar Bush Way. So we have looked to redirect the impervious areas to the stormwater or to the existing on-site storm sewer system.
Was the only thing I saw that it looked like it might flood out those houses down there.
During construction, a lot of the temporary diversion swales and stuff will have to be integrated to make sure that the runoff during construction is being directed. But ultimately, the existing system and then the extension of the existing system will capture most of the runoff. Now, the design of the stormwater facility predates some of the newer criteria, which is why we didn't. It's really just, and it's an active NOI, so we're just amending it to provide this new information. Otherwise, there might be some additional criteria that we would typically impose newer projects, but this one is not required to do so.
That pond behind the proposed development, does that serve a stormwater purpose, or is that just there? It was there.
The one on the far west side?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It does have an outlet structure, and I believe that it incorporates some of the runoff offsite from the west into the pond. That's primarily what it accepts. So it actually accepts offsite runoff and then redirects it through the site to the storm sewer system on west.
As far as these 4 units, they're all going into the downspout collection system and going.
Correct. The small portion of the rear yard area from the 2 western units might drain to the pond, the rear yard sloped area, but as far as the impervious area from the rooftops, it would all discharge lateral and then be taken directly to the storm sewer system. Bypassing
that pond could use a little bit of cleanup. You agree?
Sorry, yeah.
I was waiting for Bronson to jump. I know it, that's why I asked. It's part of integral to the storm sewer system related this project, but that's something to certainly consider, and would help with the marketability of your units too, I'm sure, because it'll be in their backyard.
As I drove up around the loop, it looks like there's an abandoned boat. Anybody see that? It's like a junkyard for, I mean, there's one, I think there's one.
That's on the other
Yeah,
side.
Northern property.
it's a different, okay, yeah, so the north. Northwest, right? There's like an abandoned boat.
Did you have any obligations under the original plans to provide any type of buffer on the north side across the driveway from?
No, because actually there's a sanitary sewer. You can see the easement,
sewer.
so you really couldn't provide any vegetative buffer in that area anyways with the easement.
Okay. Just there's a lot of scrubs and brush in there. Yeah. I know you looked like it was a new called guest parking area down off of Springbush. Do you feel there's a need for additional guest parking, let's call it, to service both these units and other units, or is it strictly on street parking for guests?
Driveways. Yeah, driveway. So each driveway can incorporate 2 vehicles and then 2 vehicles in the garage too. So each unit could
okay, I just assumed
4 vehicles.
Seen that one was built not too long ago. It's still stoned, in fact. But maybe it was an issue in the development, and that would probably be the time to consider it. But if it's not an issue, I'm okay. Other board members? I know we have the issue of the water easement. Chris. I know you've been working with Jim and the DOH and all that to get it all tied down. I think what we're proposing this evening is, Lance, correct me if I'm wrong, that easements be provided.
I have 5 to capture highway and water superintendent's comments. And then the one that I believe that was discussed was, I do have number 6.
Yep.
That's easements.
All easement language and maps.
But, so right now, I don't think there is any easements associated with the project. Is that?
No, there's currently an easement in place for the water main in the rear of the buildings, the sanitary sewer in the front, and no other easements are proposed nor required for this project. Correct.
So that number 6 may even be. There's no extension of the easement at this point proposed.
Chris, we're talking about the water on this site.
Yes.
You know, Jim Fletcher had some concerns, and I just want to make sure we are supporting Jim and his efforts.
I had to check something, and I was rushing to get back because I wanted to provide a little input on your conditions, and not sure 100% what's going on with the water situation yet. I think it may have changed since Jim's April 6th comment. So if we could just include a condition that the applicant will cooperate with town in addressing water issues on site. It's not gonna mean you gotta dig the hole, but we're gonna need some easements and some stuff. Not 100% sure what we're gonna need as of this minute. Planning on having a meeting about it later this week, and we'll be able to be more specific about it.
If I may, just for the record, state my knowledge of the situation. Chris's involvement and Chrysantha's involvement are phases 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1 represents these 3 units here. Phase 2 was the next 4 to the north, and then phase 3 is the next 4 that we're proposing tonight. I believe there's existing 2-inch water mains, that water services that serve the existing units, which predate Chrysantha's involvement on this property.
Yeah.
So it's a homeowners association for Quailbush, which is separate from
I'm not
this.
looking to jam Chrysantha up here.
Yeah.
If I need an easement on this side from Chrysantha during construction, I'm gonna come to Chrysantha and say, look, I got this condition signed here.
Understand, if I may, that Chrysantha only owns the lots. The homeowners association owns all of the rest of the property.
So
if there are easements that are needed, they will have to come from the homeowners association.
and then this condition won't apply to you even a little bit. The alternative, because I found out about this earlier today, we can put this on next agenda and I can straighten it out. But if we can do a sort of a catch-all condition that probably won't even apply to you, it sounds like we can get it done. Otherwise, I gotta.
As long as we have that condition on the record.
So it will not be used as a punishment. I just don't know what we need to get this issue resolved.
Chrysantha will certainly cooperate with anything within our.
Yeah. I think it probably won't. I don't think we're actually gonna impact you at all, but if we need something from easement through something, we're gonna need to, but we don't know what it is yet, so.
So just for clarity, how would the condition be worded then?
Lance, the way
I have the applicant will cooperate with the town of Canandaigua and water superintendent to correct water service issues on site.
Sounds like a lot more than what I heard this.
Yeah.
I don't know what we need. I want it to sound like that. Alternatively, if you want it more specific, we can let, I'm assuming you, I don't want to hold you up, which means I gotta have it broad. It's not like.
Or can we just put something like within Chrysantha's realm of responsibility or?
So you want, well, we haven't been mentioned. I'm gonna read that again, just so pre-warned.
Applicant will cooperate with the town of Canandaigua and water superintendent to correct water issues on site within the applicant's
reasonable control.
Reasonable control.
Yeah. So that would be the new condition number 6. Okay. Let me just do our standard go through here. We referred to the UC County Planning Board. We've got no response. PRC, I know you did say the stormwater management agreement was amended.
It was
Yes,
submitted to the town board last Friday.
Condition number 7 that's before you tonight, based on conversations with the town, was that the town of Canandaigua stormwater maintenance agreement form is to be accepted by the town board and filed with the Ontario County Clerk's office prior to issuance of the first building permit.
Did we see the SHPO letter?
There is, for this project, SHPO was already addressed as part of the original.
I know that. I thought we were looking for.
No, it did get brought up in PRC. I don't believe it was intended for this project if it did. This SHPO has been addressed as part of the original approval.
Okay, Chris Jensen had no comments. We talked about Jim Fletcher's comments. Is there a fire hydrant?
Yeah, we're proposing one at the far west end of the easement in this location.
Okay, good. It's on the water. I'm good. Anybody else have anything? Mark, you okay? Okay, let's move on. Seeker has been something that's long gone on this project. So we don't have to involve seeker at all. So we'll move on to the amended phase 3 re-subdivision plan approval. Do I have a motion to approve this application?
I'll make a motion to approve amended final phase redivision plan approval, Quail Bush Townhomes Phase 3. CPN 22-017 for approval with still the same amount.
So there was 8, but I'm going to suggest that we add a 9th one. And the reason is that because as part of this project, there is water main that will be dedicated to the town. Typically, the town gets a letter of credit for that dollar amount so that we can maintain it in the long run and make sure that it goes in properly. So I would suggest the number 9, that a surety estimate, including all items to be dedicated to the town of Canandaigua, be prepared by the applicant and provided to the town development office for review and processing in accordance with local law 19 of 2017, amended chapter 174, section 174-35.
Okay.
9.
Okay, have a motion second.
I'll second.
Seconds. Any further discussion? Let's see, we got the park fee included. Okay, Officer Smith. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thanks, fellas.
Great, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Okay, last but far from, oh, excuse me, I opened and closed that hearing. And I didn't.
Yeah.
I think she's on the next.
She's
on
here
the
for Center Point.
I don't mean to speak for her, but she's on the next.
Great. Step up to the podium. We are looking at a site plan for Van LaRue representing Morgan Spalletta, owners of property of the yet to be determined address on Brickyard Road, requesting a final site plan approval for the construction of 10 unit buildings and 3 5-unit buildings for a total of 115 units. Okay, Greg.
Greg McMahon with McMahon LaRue, 822 Holt Road, Webster, New York. I thought maybe to start out with, since most of the board members are new to this project, I just give a couple minutes of history. Back in May of 1998, we received approval for what was called phase 2 and phase 3 of the Center Point Apartments. At that time, all of this property was owned by the Farish Corporation. Phase 2 is the development just to the right on that drawing. Farish built 8-unit, basically brick and vinyl buildings. And we had phase 3, which is the corner parcel, was also approved with the same units. I believe there was about 128 units at the time Farish had that. They built, put in all of the utilities for phase 2 and phase 3. They built the buildings in phase 2, and at that point, they stopped. They did all the grading in phase 3, and they stopped construction because the market for apartments didn't justify them building those buildings. It sat for a long time. Max Farish passed away. Properties were sold. We came back in July of 2017, and
with a new layout, building layout for phase 3, 115 units, and they were 9-unit buildings in various configurations. Some had garages, some did not have garages. There was a community center at that time located up near Yerkes in the northerly portion of the property. That was approved in July of 2017. Subsequently, it got several extensions. Plans were signed. I think we SWIPs and all everything were prepared. And at that time, that was being developed by Morgan for whatever issues that they never proceeded with that. Now we come to the present day. We're back here again with phase 3, 115 units, the same number of units, but Spalletta has chosen to go with a little more of an upgraded building. These are now 10-unit buildings, and each of the units has a minimum of 1 garage. So the number of garages is increased. Total number of units in phase 3 has stayed the same. In order to accommodate the slightly larger building with the 10 units, we moved the community center down to the entrance off of Brickyard Road, directly opposite the proposed maintenance building, which has always been part of this plan. So I think that's a quick summary of this. As I said, the utilities, the storm sewers, the water mains, and the sanitary sewers are all in place for this. The Horseshoe Road, the main Horseshoe Road is where it was always designed going back to 1998. We did add the connection back in 2017, the connection out to Brickyard Road as the second entrance. I think at the time, the town was much in favor of that connection. And so we're here tonight with these plans for 115 units, which will finish off basically what is known as Center Point Apartments.
Okay.
And this is all part of a PUD which was developed in the 1980s, which set limits on the total number of residential units. And that's a lot of that's in the summary on the site plan phase, but the total residential units that were approved in the PUD was 571 units, and it's apartments, townhouses, and so forth. With the completion of phase 3, we will be at 524 units. So below the threshold of what was permitted under the original PUD. So I think with that.
And I think some of the PUD restrictions as far as setbacks and height, they were reduced. Yep. Yeah, in that process you just went through. So yeah, originally it was 60-foot setbacks in buildings, and I think that got reduced. Yeah, I guess question on the Auburn Trail.
Yes,
which is near and dear to all of us. Is it your intent, or is that your obligation to construct that?
It's an obligation going back to the 2017, and prior to that, when we did the townhouses on Brickyard, we built the Auburn Trail across the front of the townhouses. Mm-hmm. And it was the intent and obligation that they continue that as it's shown on that plan out to Yerkes Road.
And the easement exists to construct it, and you will construct it in accordance with whatever design I guess the town settles in on as far as. Well, I guess in that area it's pretty well set, 10 foot.
It's already set.
It was, I believe it was a stone chip type of a pathway that was constructed across the front of the townhouse.
So we'll just add 12.
So what we're saying is that Auburn Trail will be constructed and installed as part of this phase or in this portion of the project.
Yep.
Greg, do you have a detail of the Auburn Trail plans?
I believe we do, Lance. I will double check. I know we had it
on
the townhouse plan. I thought we carried it over. If it's not, I
don't know.
Copy it over, but I will double check on it.
Greg, I didn't see the whole thing. Are you planning any landscaping buffers around it?
Yeah, there is a fairly elaborate landscape plan that was put together as part of this. The lighting plan, which is also part of this, really the only lighting is the roadway lighting, which are dark sky compliant LED lamps. There is no, in the original plans for the 9-unit buildings, we had some parking lot lighting, but the lighting now is just going to be, there are renderings. I don't know if these made it to the.
Yes.
They're there.
Made it to the screen, but there are coach lights on the.
Rendering, is it?
Either the 10 or the 5.
Both of them.
Either one. If you go down to the bottom.
Yep, right. Second one up on the right.
To the right.
Rendering. One of the other.
Either one. Yeah.
We got like Kim said. I know.
It's hard to see with us. It is hard.
That's the 5-unit building. And you can see there are typical residential coach lights on the buildings, but that would be the main source of lighting.
No street lights.
No street lights around the building.
Phase 2 is
on the roadway there will be. And this is a private road. It's not dedicated. This is part of the complex. Even though, I mean, originally all of this was owned by the Ferris Corporation. Over subsequent years, this phase of the apartments is going to be owned by a separate entity from who owns the existing apartments right now.
Is the entrance for the 2 units around the side?
Yes, there's actually a garage on the one side of the building. On the 10-unit building, there are garages on both ends of the building.
That's nice.
But on the 5-unit, it's just the one.
And these are for sale and also rental, just rental.
Just
Do you know
rental.
the price point for these?
I don't. I was hoping somebody'd be here from Splendid tonight. I'm not sure what happened, but they specifically went with this as a higher end unit. So I think your rental prices on these are going to be significantly above what they might currently be on the remaining apartments there. These are with the garages and
Sure.
they're more, well, they are apartments. Those aren't, even though they may look like townhouses, there's full units upstairs and full units downstairs, but there are a higher level of finishes. But I really shouldn't even venture to guess what.
Are they also upgrading the other units on phase 2 and 1 and 2?
They don't. No, it's not. If there is any upgrading going on, it would be by the owners of those.
That's going up.
Yeah.
Did I miss the landscaping plan or?
It's in the package.
It's in the site plan.
We'll go back to the site plans and
You scroll down.
toward the end.
23, okay.
Yep.
I missed
Yeah.
that.
Scroll down.
Just
I've
scroll
got it.
down.
And
I'm just looking through the site plan on the section that has the Auburn Trail on it. You mentioned that there's no intent for lighting along that. I'm just noticing that as you go south from there and the trail continues, I guess it's probably indirect lighting that's happening. But would the if you look at along Brickyard Road with the pool access and everything along those areas, you're going to have a lighted area up to what is Center Point Boulevard, so coming from the south up. And then there wasn't anything in the plan for continuing on the Auburn Trail up to. Okay.
No intent to light the Auburn Trail. There is lighting on Center Point Boulevard at the intersection, and as you go south along the townhouses, there is lighting, some
roadway
lighting that would happen to cast light on sections of the Auburn Trail.
Keep going.
You would go up.
It's this one. Yeah, right.
Next one up.
There it is.
Oh, yes.
January or the March?
We're gonna hold it to that landscape.
Oh.
I didn't expect any less.
Truck's gonna go out.
It's gonna place where you sign it, so once I sign it.
That's what was required. I mean, it's what was basically the same thing that was in the 2017 approval.
Yeah.
Other than with the newer buildings, we had to tweak things a little bit.
And I see you've added some guest parking.
Yes, we did.
From the 2008, last 2018.
We actually, we upped the parking from what was originally approved, because what we've got now, the requirement is 230 spaces for 115 units. We've got 128 garage spaces and 144 exterior spaces for a total of 272. So 230 required, we've got 272. So we did try and provide for some additional guest and overflow parking. As with the other apartments, there are, since these are all rentals, they're restricted. There's no RV storage, there's no boat storage. They're very strict on the, there's no exterior storage of.
What about garbage?
Garbage or totes.
Oh, so they do individual totes.
Individual totes.
Okay.
So the totes will be, with each unit having a garage, they will keep their tote inside and then just put it out on the appropriate collection day.
Sewer, the county public works did a review, I guess it was February 10th.
I haven't seen any comments yet.
Just want to make sure, I think we talked about it at PRC, that you had adequate sewer capacity and certainly water. You've talked to Jim Fletcher, I assume, regarding that's Canandaigua Farmington?
Canandaigua Farmington, yeah, that would be Robin McDonald. And I know, again, when we went through this the first time, there were no issues with regard to sewer. All of this goes to a pump station located behind phase 1 of the apartments, which pumps up to Campus Drive and Gravity. When we came in with this originally in 2017, and subsequently when we previously when we did the townhouses, there was some capacity issue, and that was eventually resolved, and it had nothing to do with capacity on the site, but had to do with a force main down here. I believe it was near the firehouse.
Yeah.
And that ended up. That was a pinch point in this, but in the expansion of that, and at the time, I think there was maybe some contribution that came from this project. I just don't recall, but that was upgraded, and they provided that with the calculations that we provided for all of these units, so it was taken into consideration.
Kim, do you want to bring up the county public works out of our file?
Ontario County DPW.
The Braun,
yeah,
right there.
Right,
Up one,
right there.
Okay, and he was referring to the 2018, which he didn't feel had been addressed. So you want to go back and go up to the 2018? Not to prolong it, I know. Go up one there, everything. There were a lot of things that 4 pages.
Yep.
4 pages. Have you seen that and addressed?
Oh, yeah, we addressed all of that, and again, that was right about the time there was a letter of credit that we submitted for review, and I think we had everything addressed, but then the project just got sidelined, and.
Well, from John's latest email, it appears that he didn't see it.
Well, we we'll go back because I know we'll have to go through this again with the water department and with Ontario County for the sewers, just to.
Can you scroll down
refresh.
just a little bit? I was trying to, none of those comments seem all that crazy.
No, yeah, we added some about, there were just the six comments there.
What's the rest? Details?
Yeah, those must be details.
Okay. Yeah, details. I know those details got added.
Okay.
Comments were
Trying to dot our I's, cross our T's.
None of them said sewer issue. So.
Chris Jensen had brought up the possibility that you may have to test some of those lines in there.
Well,
They've been there as
along
the hills.
One of the requirements from Ontario County for sanitary is that they all had to be cleaned, videoed, and subject to retesting based on at that time, Ontario County would determine whether they wanted any retested once they reviewed the videos, but they all have to be flushed and videoed. The water, I don't know. I guess I'd have to check. I don't know if the water is currently pressurized. If that may,
I don't know if it is. I don't have that.
Is under pressure,
okay.
But
I'm sure. I don't think it's something this board's concerned about. Just want to make sure you got everything taken care of. Okay, there's no playground proposed. Is there anywhere on this?
Just the community center. There will be. There's a pool, the community center, and I'm sure they'll be doing. I had a note there, but they'll do some small children's playground.
And I know Lance picked it up in his conditions about the school district, I guess, regarding drop off and pickups.
Yeah, back in one of the, I think it was the 2018 or 17 version, school district came back and talked about a bus pickup spot. I don't recall if they specifically had identified a location or not. So is it possible that the community center will be used as the pickup and drop off spot?
More than likely, when we did the apartments up on Buffalo Street, the apartments, it was basically a lot of private drives in there. And when the school district came back, they wanted the pickup was solely at the community center. So any children would, it's not a long walk. There are sidewalks through the development, and they were going to do the pickup.
So one of the conditions that I've provided to the board for your consideration is that the plans be updated to identify that off street pick up and drop off location, whatever that may be.
Yeah, okay.
You want to add the playground as a condition?
I don't know where they put it, other than the infield area there, but that's a kind of base in the center of the circle.
They are paying parking.
They painted parking. Maybe that's what I was thinking. And they have room outside the pool. Put something down there for one second.
That's actually not a bad idea to put it down.
The pool, yeah, I think that's if I correct, the other community center that serves phase 1 and phase 2 has a small playground near the pool.
Okay. Naomi, you're
Yeah.
We're recognizing you. You said you had some questions or comments.
Well, I'm not allowed to ask questions. I've learned that. So I do have some comments I'd like to make. When this development first started way back when, it was all woods across the road from our house, all woods.
Where do you live, Naomi? What's your address?
I live on Yerkes Road.
Okay, thank you.
We farmed there for many years. So it was all woods across the road. We were told, no, they're not going to clear cut it. We're going to build our buildings and you probably won't even see them because of the trees. Well, they cut all the vegetation, clear cut it. So they didn't honor what they were going to say, what they say that they were going to do. So now we're going to have more cars on the road, approximately at least 2 cars per unit. So that's about 230 cars, give or take. And we have a speed limit on these roads, which is 55. So I would like to say we need to lower the speed limit on the roads, number one. And maintaining our rural character with no sidewalks and not lit up like a city. Right now, in the middle of the night, if you get up at our house, you can walk out here and you don't even need to turn a light on because it's so bright across the road. We have a lot of deer crossings on Yerkes Road and Brickyard Road. There are no signs that designate deer crossing. Also, I think that if we're going to have this increased traffic, that you need to put up no passing signs, because right now I can tell you with our farm equipment, when we go to turn left into a driveway or in a field, we have people trying to pass us on the left while we are trying to turn left. And I can't tell you how many times we've almost got somebody in a ditch because we're turning left and he's trying to pass us. So I think the roads need to be restriped if that's going to be the case with more traffic. Also, I think in this new development, what have you, people need to be aware that this is a farming area. So they need to deal with that. Fortunately, many of the people across the road that have talked to us like the farming aspect, but you know, you always get 1 or 2 that don't. So you did say something about your lighting plan. So I hope that your lighting plan isn't lit up like a city, because it certainly is across the road right now. And as far as the landscape plan goes, when you were talking about the development off of 364, you were talking how important it was to have all those trees there and blah, blah, blah. Well, I hope that it carries over to the north end of town. I know that not a lot of you live on the north end of town, but we do. And we would like to see our rural character maintained in the north end of town, as well as other areas of the town. So as far as the Auburn Trail goes, I know it's going to end at Yerkes Road because we have not given permission for the Auburn Trail to continue across our farm. Anything else, Garrett? Those are my comments, not in the form of a question.
Thank you. Very well said. Well, a lot of the issues you brought up, Naomi, probably were sort of out of the purview of the applicant regarding speed limit and deer crossing signs and those sort of things. As far as the light,
but not off the town's limit. So I'm directing that to the town.
Okay, understood. Forewarned.
Procedurally though, just to make sure that there were signs and speed limit, it's a petition that has to be made by the town board, ultimately to the town board, and then from the town board to the county and or the state. For that
I know, because we've already tried it before and we were told, no, we can't do that. There's no way.
I mean, it can definitely be done, but it has
Well,
to, there's just a process for it.
Yeah, that's not what we were told. So
could occur after the fact. It gives you more ammunition to justify a lower speed limit because you have more traffic.
Right, there's, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so to do it now, you're gonna get the same answer you got then. But to put the 115 units in, maybe, you know, that could put it over the hump. The lighting, we talked about the lighting. It's gonna be dark sky compliant. It's gonna be
downcast. We have the lighting contours on the plan. MRV can review those, but it's the intent to keep it down. Now, it's not going to be lit up like a car lot, but it is. It does
probably less
provide,
than phase 2 and phase 1, I'm sure,
yeah,
because they were the old city vapors. Or
you're right. These are all LED. So
the lighting should improve, Naomi. Bob, what else?
Well, if it's supposed to be in the country and rural, I don't know why you need all those lights anyway.
Dear.
Well, part of the thing we're dealing with goes back to 1986 when they created the PUD up there, and that allowed for residential development and a mixture of different uses. And it was, I guess, always included that at some point this thing, and the good news is this is the last section of the apartments anyway, right?
Yes.
So there will be no more. But I think, you know, they sort of committed, the town committed at that time to move ahead with this type of development.
I understand all that because we went to all those meetings and we're very well aware.
Okay.
Their landscape plan to take care of all the.
Yeah, that's true. Now, you know, you said there was a clear cut that occurred early on. I think with this landscape plan proposed, I don't know if you got to see it at all, but it's very extensive and it's very complete, comprehensive. So it's going to look a lot better as far as landscaping across the street than it does now.
Yeah, most of the landscaping I think that's being proposed is perimeter oriented, so it should hopefully block some of the view shed
because you will be
from the neighboring properties.
If you look at the back of the home, so
that's what's proposed.
Yeah, and I think there's a good stand of trees.
The only trees that are over there are around the golf course.
Okay, anyone else in the group, the audience? Board members, do you have anything else to add? Any concerns?
Chuck, just something I was looking through the archives and reviewing this one is I didn't see, was there a traffic study that was done on the project when it was created some 3 decades ago, sorry?
Was there?
I believe there was one done as part of the creation of the PUD, but I don't recall what it said at that point in time.
It probably based on the 500.
Right. But the number of units hasn't changed from that original approval.
From the original approval, yeah.
Right, which was authorized then and then reauthorized, I think, 3 more times since then. And each time that we have to approve it, we have to go back and make sure that it's in conformance with the PUD, which I believe at that point in time considered all of those environmental impacts, including the traffic.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know if that would have potentially.
You take into consideration the environmental impact on the wildlife in our area?
As part of the environmental review, Seeker would have addressed that at the time when they completed it.
Yeah, 1980.
Well, I think it was done, yes, in the 80s or 90s. And then the first plan is part of the 2015?
I believe it was done with, I think 1983 or 86, there was an environmental impact statement.
A full EIS.
I believe
that was done at that time.
For PUD, you would typically do a full EIS.
Right, because that's what we zoned.
Right.
Which was a farce.
Okay, anybody else? Ready to move on? Okay, Seeker was handled back in 1986, so we're okay there. Let's move on to a consideration of a final site plan approval resolution.
I just want to add before we get too far, 86, yeah, seeker was done for the whole project, but each subsequent phase had an amended seeker review associated with it. And then each adoption of the PUD standards that have taken place since 86 to I think 2015 have also considered the environmental aspects related to the project. So I don't want to be perceived as if the environmental impacts were only done once in 1986, because that's not completely accurate.
So when was the amendment done for phase 3?
I don't recall all the dates,
okay,
but I know that we did it 2086, 2005. I don't remember when each subsequent phase was approved final, but they would have been amendments done. Each one of those.
We submitted a seeker for every application that we made.
Yeah.
Whether there was,
I'm looking at it.
whether there was a seeker resolution as part of that, but there was a seeker submitted for every phase.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you say in this whereas and supplemented by the adoption of local laws amended.
Yeah, amendments, but then also we can reference that it was done
Yeah,
as
I
part
would,
of the all the approval, individual
based on
approvals.
what you said, I would say that we're not relying totally on the October 1986.
I can add language.
Seeker determination. New went, as Greg said, you submitted one. I know they did a SEFA or SEAF, whatever for this one.
Yes. Approvals of final phases. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. And while you're in there, the latest plan revision is
Yeah,
it's March 18th, right? Thank you. Right. That's what we're looking at tonight. Okay, I'm open to a motion.
I will make that motion to approve the final site plan for CPN 22-002 phase 3 of the Center Point Apartments at Brickyard Road with 12 conditions. Thank you, Lance.
The 12th one is in regards to the note being added to the plans that states that the Auburn Trail that runs across the frontage of this property is to be constructed per the town approved detail as part of this phase of the project. And I can reference the streets. I just didn't.
Okay, motion from Amanda. Do I have a second?
Quickly, just when does that have to be? When
When you need it. So
Should we
it's
put
right now,
something
it's
in
just
there?
as part of this phase, but if there's a timing. Yeah, then sometimes it's considered.
Right, because when it linked to, should we,
With or prior to the construction of the balance of the other rest of the Auburn
Right,
Trail
okay.
as accentuated. So
Yeah,
you're looking for
really
this to be, not have the Auburn Trail finished, and this is the only section that's not done.
absolutely, so there,
For
I'm
some
just
reason.
thinking, but timeline is still up in the air, but I don't know if we referenced the connectivity,
Well, I don't know, when does the other portion gonna be
I
constructed?
don't, that's.
Right. So right now, they're required as part of this, once they start to build it, prior to the closing of the project. So right
Oh,
now,
yeah,
it'd be
sure.
subsequent to the last CLO, right, that'd be issued, that this would all have to be constructed.
Maybe we should.
You're
put that.
suggesting that it be done possibly before
Building permits?
that, prior to issuance of building permits?
That might be too premature.
Okay.
I mean, is it?
I just didn't want this to go on for
It's definitely got to
forever.
go in before the landscaping.
Right.
Right,
Which is the
right.
last thing that you're gonna do, and if it's done in the winter months, you're not doing that
You're not
until
doing
spring.
landscaping, so you've got, the Auburn Trail's got to be in for the landscaping.
Well, maybe. That with landscaping bond, can we?
So the bond, the letter of
Right.
credit that will be on file will have a dollar amount associated with this construction that we wouldn't authorize release until it was constructed either.
Could we add that into that surety?
This will be in there.
Okay.
It has to be a part of that. I'm just trying to make sure I capture, because right now, regardless of what we do, this would have to be constructed before we release the surety, before the town takes dedication of any infrastructure. They would want all this stuff to be done prior to closing of the project. That
Yes.
part is a must. That's already built into our process. So the question, I think, is if we are concerned with the timing, do we want to push that up? Is there a need to have it done before, whenever that date comes?
There absolutely could be.
And what would that be contingent on? When the Auburn Trail is being built?
Right, because we
Right.
have yet to determine the last phase and where it's gonna run.
So maybe we need to have. Yeah,
Prior to or with
Or
the
with.
construction.
Thank you.
development, right?
Yeah.
as far as this phase of the project.
I guess the two risks we run are, we go through what we've gone through the last couple of years, that you don't get the plan signed, you go back, and we're sitting here a year, 2 years from now, looking at another set of plans, and the Auburn Trail is further along, and we still don't have this piece yet. But once the plans are signed, but then we're into this condition or whatever condition we impose.
So this doesn't prevent us from signing plans, right?
Right.
This would be a condition once construction has started.
Prior to the signing plans, you're gonna want to see the surety.
Right, we have to get a surety. So they before they can begin the surety, the plans would be signed, building permit application would have been received, and the town would have approved and accepted a surety of a dollar amount associated with the project.
We
Then they would-
submitted all of those in 2017, to update them to current
Yeah, so.
pricing, right? And recently.
And then once, we would likely have a pre-con, that's a pre-construction meeting beforehand, and then they would be able to go out and start doing the work.
Okay, so for the board, do you want to read what condition 12?
I can try again. So I have a notice to be added to the plans that states that the Auburn Trail that runs along the frontage, and I can cite the road names of the property, is to be constructed per the town's approved detail as part of this phase of the project, or as part of the construction of the remaining balance of the Auburn Trail. You might want to have.
So then if the Auburn Trail starts to be constructed to the north, no matter where the applicant is, he's got to come in and put this section of Auburn Trail, even though he doesn't have any intent of building his units yet, or he's got to build his part of the trail. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. When do you anticipate this project being moving forward with construction? And I'm obviously not holding it to you.
They've been holding my feet to the fire to get this approval. They want to start
soon.
Okay.
I think this summer.
Yes.
I mean,
The trail will be
all
constructed.
moved if this goes in before the trail gets out.
As quickly as I can get the plan signed, they want to. They're gonna post.
Spring.
All right, let's live with that condition. Is that okay with the board?
Yes.
All right, so Amanda, you accept that amendment and
You, Bob.
second. And further discussion? All in favor?
Hi.
Okay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you.
All right, we got minutes from March 22nd.
Motion to approve. Minutes.
Okay,
I'll second.
motion second, all in favor?
Hi.
All right.
Aye.
I got Bob Scott, yeah, I just said it wrong. Sorry, Bob Scott.
Bob, 19. Okay, all in favor, aye. Motion carries. Nice job, John. as usual. We're not spending any money, we're not
giving any
referrals.
money away.
We're not giving money out. Look at this, did you? PBA. Code enforcement has something to add. Comprehensive plan. Have you all looked at Bob's suggested revisions to the solar? I guess the only thing I was thinking is if you take out the AR1, the AR2, which is a big piece
That's a
of it,
huge.
what does it leave as far as potential area for large scale? And again, I was trying to think.
Industrial.
Industrial,
Which we don't have a lot.
commercial.
Not a lot of commercial, CC. R3,
CC we have,
which is
we have
not too much.
handful. We have more AR1 too.
But we're trying to, the thought is eliminated from utilizing ag land. Is that the intent?
Yeah, that was my conference that I've had with the ag guys.
Okay.
Everything else.
Carl?
Yeah.
Because my other concern was sometimes farmers look at solar as an option for them to make revenue. And we'd be precluding their ability to put up a solar farm.
Everything in there in town code is waivable too. They can still waiver and request a waiver to build on those if they want.
Waiver from.
So if they came to us with a request to do it in ag land, but you didn't allow it in your code, you're saying they can provide
There's
a
a waiver
request a
ability
waiver to allow them
in the code.
to build.
Yeah, they can request a waiver.
Because currently we do say that an applicant has to, the land, if it's valuable farmland, will not be considered for solar.
And the fear is there's a lot of land and ag land right now that's in a limbo.
You know,
There's
from
a
what-
bunch.
Right, that may or may not be listed as valuable. So there's a lot of potential, basically to be lost.
Yeah, land that fell through the cracks.
Yep.
We have 2, maybe 3 solar applications.
Chris was
that
saying
I
today.
got a call, another call today.
What
They're probably
zone
all
I
districts?
have no details.
But you haven't received anything formal yet?
No, there's nothing formal, but there's like an increase in, like all of a sudden, an increase in inquiries.
Well, there's pretty much like 1 out of every 3 projects that get submitted anywhere is a solar project right now. And you're gonna get a lot. They're coming.
Problem in my world, the town doesn't get much benefit out of it. The town people have to look at it all the time. Unless it's buffered.
I've had seen one person, not to interrupt you, that said they wanted to see. Point out because that was the first person ever that I
They like looking at them.
They were mad because the board was trying to buffer it. And they wanted
Oh,
to
they
see
wanted
it.
to see. What?
He was the only person at the meeting.
I've never heard
I
that.
wasn't here. It was
Oh.
another community meeting. I'm just pointing that out. Just, there might be one person
Might
who
be.
wants to see.
They can have some on their land.
There you go. Might have been the setup.
This-
So these potential applications, you don't know where they are,
I don't.
which farms they are. I assume they're in either the AR1 or the AR2. I bet.
They've been making it, just kind of general inquiries, but I think that this company in New Hampshire is the one that, yeah.
They'll come in, then they'll sell to another
To another
company.
company.
So this would take months to get changed in code, right?
Well, we'll have to go to ordinance. They'll mull it over. For,
Yeah,
You might, a lot of communities who are considering, because I would encourage the town to at least update their code. It's one of the original ones. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with at least taking a look at it and have a committee dive into it and add whatever new terminology that there is, because there is a lot. So a lot of the steps that you would do is moratorium get passed to prevent any applications coming in while you guys are doing this review, and then take the time to evaluate it, because there's some communities that are on their 3rd go around already on their solar well, because they did it once, applications come in, they realize they can clean it up, they did it again, applications come in, like still some new terminology, come in and do it again. Just a thought.
batteries, in that one aspect, the batteries.
the storage of the solar.
The storage of the solar, isn't that something that's occurred since we've adopted the original?
So there's a couple of things to think about with this too, and I'm going to tie this back to the ag piece as well. We continue to talk about valuable agricultural land, but it's not clear when you look at the ag piece in the maps of what's defined as valuable agricultural land.
Yeah.
So I think, why can't we take this? I mean, you can take the opposing argument to it is that at some point, if we have an energy crisis, and let's avoid the politics of discussing whether or not we have one, there may be a need to do that. So with the things like the scenic view shed, what we've said is that we put that burden on the developer at that case to prove that it's not in the scenic view shed. So once it's in the map, then it's their determination, it's their responsibility to determine that it is or is not in the scenic view shed. When it comes to value, why can't we turn it to the same thing and allow them to make a case to the value of it? So, and treat it in much the same way. So you're putting in a requirement that says, okay, these large solar projects can't go here, and here's why. And if they choose to try to go against that, then we give them an opportunity to demonstrate the value to the community. Because I think we're going to see arguments that come for that, and I think we're going to see more and more projects. In reading the decommissioning piece, I know there's always a concern with batteries, but I think aren't most of those as their proposed grid tie systems that basically use the grid as the battery?
Yeah, there's very few right now in communities have the battery storage being proposed as part of it, only because one, most communities are not allowing battery storage at this time, but they are proposing to put the pads in for future growth, because the intention, I think to some degree, is there's a possibility for these things to obviously advance in technology and therefore produce more than what the grid can handle. And they want the battery to be able to store it on the site. That's an option that they're considering. But I haven't seen many where solar and battery storage are being proposed, because most communities, quite honestly, are just not allowing that to happen.
Okay. And I know, most of the time because it converts to DC at that point, they're looking at proximity to some type of a transfer station anyways.
Right.
So that's going to be somewhat limiting to the infrastructure where they can put them. I mean, if you look at Europe and other places, you see most of your solar beds at the base of a windmill, which is interesting. And
you're right. We just did a presentation for Tioga County, and we presented them a map of likely solar locations. And it was based obviously on the natural resources that might prevent them, which we found out really doesn't prevent them. Steep slope or wetlands, they could put them in steep slope and they can put them in wetlands. Tree areas don't really deter them. It's really substations and grid accessibility. That's where they want to go. If there's a substation or a grid available to them, then if you can pinpoint those locations on your site, whatever farms that are big enough adjacent to them, those are where they want to put them.
Okay.
County Road 10 right now. And
the landfills or brownfield locations are obviously the easiest for them, because there's
personal is easy, right?
But then going forward,
but Monks had its restrictions as far as farmland. Some of the neighbors didn't like it.
But can't we then identify the areas? I mean, it sounds like
you could. I mean, it's not that clear cut as I made it out to be, but that seems to be the trend from what we can tell on the GIS mapping that we've done in other communities, to say, here's where solar is. And you look at the common factors, it's near grid, it's a 50 acre or larger ag land, right? It's not deterred. You're not being deterred by steep slopes. They're not being deterred by tree clearing. They're not being deterred by wetlands. Obviously, they would prefer one without those, but
doesn't that even make it more possible to then put the burden back on them to
demonstrate?
Yeah.
Yep. And that's how some communities are wording it. Then demonstrates prime soil, for example. Not all prime soils are equal. Some prime soil is being farmed every day, and some of it is on areas that aren't really obtainable to equipment. And therefore, how do you regulate between the two? I think the town currently has a process utilizing special use permits. So my understanding of the special use permit process is not each one is reviewed independently of the other one. So depending on the location, depending on what gets presented to the board, doesn't necessarily guarantee that the applicant's going to get an approval. It's a special use permit. Therefore, special conditions and rights are what they have to be able to demonstrate to this board is, does it meet that criteria and does that make sense to the board currently? But I do think there's an opportunity here to tweak it to make it more current with what we've been seeing out there.
Well, and since we're going through this redraft, any input you would have, or Chris was the original author of it. He's had some second thoughts as to, gee, I wish I had added this at that time.
Well, I think just terminology alone, some of it has changed. I mean, commercial roof. So when it's leased space for the roof. So instead of putting it on large scale farms on the ground, which is what we typically see, they're renting the space of the residential area farms, and they're leasing it, and then it's the same idea, but it's on the roof.
That's
currently
that's in our code.
It is?
Yep.
Are you sure it's not residential roof mounted? Because residential roof mount is typically
Sure
type 2.
commercial.
And they let it go, but if it's
sure
on the facade.
On commercial buildings and leased out? Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
All right, yeah, that would be something I'll look at. Because that's good if he had it in there back then.
The way we treat things now, if we get an application, the first thing you do is send it to the ag committee. Because to get a special use permit, if they deem it's prime soil, well, that's it.
According to a special use permit right now process, it goes to the zoning board, and then goes to somebody else and then to us. But that's where I wanted to add ag to this.
The zoning board.
Okay. I think it's the zoning. If you look at special permit for large scale, that's what it says.
Okay.
It says,
But in VRC, we would send it over.
well,
Automatically.
Oh, to the ag.
Yeah, to ag.
well, that's not in the code though.
Right, right.
I'm saying.
I know what you're saying, absolutely. I do.
It just mentions valuable
Yeah.
land, but
Right.
who determines valuable land? And what is valuable? Is it prime land?
Right.
Is it all prime land?
And they know that that's changing right now, that whole thing.
Well, I don't know, maybe a joint meeting with the ag committee at some point.
Yeah.
Do you want me to send it to them?
Yeah,
For them to take a look at?
Bob's gonna check with Bob and,
Check with Bob
and you
then-
check with Sarah.
Sarah's on
Two of you.
vacation, she's not staffing this Thursday's meeting.
Well, let's get there.
I'll be there. Okay.
All right.
We'll see if Bob wants it on the agenda or bring it to privilege of the floor. If not, maybe.
Yeah, you might want to consider requiring a moratorium be placed sooner than rather than later. Because there will be likely an application that you get that you might not want to get it before you tie in the loose ends.
So Mark, as far as EV stations, we could be trailblazers, huh?
Oh my goodness, you don't even want to know it.
Well, maybe we would mark time on this. A lot of the correspondence you got and I've read is we're considering something, so I rather than the people out front, the point people on this thing necessarily, let's leave some of the people who are more experienced with dealing with these things to sort of lay the land, and we'll follow behind.
Yeah, so much of what you're seeing is that there's just not a lot that's happening locally, and by local I mean in New York State. If you look outside of the area, there's a ton of activity, and people are half a decade to a decade ahead of us. And I'm happy to share at some point some of the findings with it. Again, I think it's probably acting in a way that as it comes, that we don't become the blockers to whatever it is that we want to see in the community. And then there becomes some things, I mean, there's over 100 different varieties of these things already when you look at what's considered a Class 2 charger. So they all look a little bit different, and they're and under our current code, they're basically treated as an appliance or a plug. And I think they would prefer to keep it that way to expedite the installation of those systems. But there are, Parrington is putting one in right now at a Wegmans. It's basically a billboard. So is that a charging station, or is that a moving sign? And if it happens to go next to a road, do we care or don't we care?
Is it private? Is it public?
Exactly. So I mean, there's a whole. I shared some of the initial slide deck that I put together with Chuck, and it creates more questions. NYSERDA is not on it right now, so New York State has some general planning guidelines, but there's more to come. The Federation of Planning is more to come from New York State's perspective. But when you look at someplace like Tahoe, 2018, they put together a full planning guide. So when I proposed recommendations to it, I basically used a lot of that where they see a lot more of it. The reality of it, though, is that if we play catch up and we have an opinion, that's risky because I think it's going to come at us quite a bit faster than we thought it might. And the demand locally. I mean, if you just look at the scaling of the vehicles that they're changing now with introduction of what I would consider more standardized vehicles, like the F-150 Lightning. So it's not the crazy cyber truck that everybody has an opinion on. It's a truck that's now electric. It's that part of that light utility that they're expecting to see ramp up more than anything else. So the service vehicles and that light utility vehicle, it's not so much the cars that we drive every day. So I think it's going to come pretty quickly. That's the reason to not wait and see what everybody else does, I think. And I think it can also potentially be a moderate positive to the area as well if we look at the things that we call like the tourism areas, because right now people are planning their destinations based on availability as well. Right now we really don't have any in the town, so you can look at it and we might have had two, but we really only have one. The city has 5 or 6 of them, so they're, like I said, they're coming, and it'd be better to use them as, I think from my personal perspective, using it as a carrot instead of a stick probably makes more sense, because at some point they're going to be here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Scott, you're ready
I have
for
not
Verizon?
contacted Verizon, so I will do that.
And they were just jumping for joy.
They're not gonna come in and present to us.
Oh, they know. They know. You just have to talk to their people. They love us.
Okay, Amanda, I know you're bird dog in the affordable housing group.
I had to check my calendar before we started today. I'm like, oh, yeah, this week is the 3rd Friday.
It
we
is
started
at 1 o'clock.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll be on Zoom. And
Affordable housing meeting.
So on my personal social media, I found some affordable housing and some sort of seminar. It's out of DC. And I'm like, oh, I'll stop in on that on Thursday and see if there's anything that sparks any considerations, but we'll see. So I will be on Zoom on Friday.
Okay. Good.
Did you get the invitation today? I went out today.
I'll double check.
Okay,
I'll
because
let
if
you
you didn't, let me know and I'll send you.
Okay.
Super excited to learn more about that, Amanda, because I mean, I see we've got, I guess it'd probably be, I don't know if it's considered, I want to understand the difference between what we're seeing as high density application and affordable housing. So, because it seems like we're getting a number of applications towards higher density. I don't know if it meets the criteria for being affordable yet.
Right.
Price of land in Canada.
What?
Okay. We have one other piece of business. This is 90-day extension request
Solar.
from Aurora Solar, Avalon County Route 10. This is their second 90-day extension. The reason being, read on the extension request. I'm not going to read it. I think the same one they had for the first extension. So I assume we're amenable to giving them another extension.
The last one, right?
This will
Be their last one, and so that should
July.
be passed on to
July 8th, 2022.
Yeah.
Dave. Okay, do I have a motion to give them extension to July 8th?
I'll make that motion to extend them to July 8th. And I'll say also, I appreciate the extension request memo. This is very helpful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Put a little burden on the applicant. I didn't get it done.
Right.
I'll second.
You have a second? Thank you, Scott.
Sure.
All righty, we've got a motion second to give them another 90 days. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, I keep grabbing the pen here. Metros, they are going to refile.
And thank you for the metros. I'm sorry.
You folks, let's see, some of you remember Metros, Mr. Bill Metros, out behind the hammocks. It was a conservation subdivision. We about 10, 11 lots. We spent a lot of time working with Brennan, a piece of land, narrow and long.
Skinny.
And the wall was dropped and never got to, and their time ran out. So now they have to reapply. So
You wanted to build a real small house.
yeah, that was then.
Below our minimum.
They were smaller houses.
You're right, he did. want
Yeah,
to-
we, it was a logical transition from the hammocks.
Yeah.
It was a nice, I think we came up with a nice site plan. once I
Yeah.
said that, But he's back, so, and we never signed any plan.
I think you're correct. No plans have been signed,
You're
which means they're
absolutely
coming
right
back in
on
with a preliminary.
Because we combined the preliminary amended with the final.
Final.
Okay, for next meeting, the 26th, on the agenda, whether we see it or not, we have the Venezia Group representing Uptown Point. He was going to amend his plans.
He's amended it at least twice now.
Does he
I'm
have
not
something-
kidding.
Does he have something for us to look at in 26th?
Yeah, he does.
I'm sure he's got something for you to look at. It's better if you want.
Because he
I
said
think there's
he wanted to
maybe
make the
one-
lots bigger.
Yeah, I think one lot is 3 acres, one is 2. I don't know. I literally have another iteration that I
He
got.
said it was
last
based on his marketing, so.
Yep.
Then Timberwind, that's another toughie, 6170 Dugway Road. It's a subdivision. Which,
You're asking you to waive.
yeah, asking us to waive a lot on a public road. Which we need help from staff
We
and
will get you.
legal. as to how it's gonna work. Mr. Janeko's got a building sign out there on 332 for his farm market. That's in the files. Then Thomas Road, up on Thomas Road, there's a 2-lot subdivision. I guess that's before Ray Rock has not changed it.
I haven't heard
Okay.
that. I haven't heard any difference.
And Pro Cutters want to put a storage yard in operation out on County Route 46 next to the solar array.
Yeah, Bax Road.
Good place for it.
It is,
Okay,
actually.
and then 2218 Scott Harder for 5272 Menteith, that's on hold. And 2220 Marks.
Harder and, yeah, the Harder
Okay.
is on hold.
All right, so that gives us, and then on the 10th, we have Thornton. Glenn thinks he'll be ready with his sketch for, what's that, Uptown?
Uptown Landing
Uptown Landing.
and Sunset
And
Ridge.
Is that what it's called now?
continuation of
Oh, yeah, we'll add Sunset Ridge.
Sunset Ridge.
Yeah, it's called now.
So, hope we didn't scare everybody else. Anything else for the good of the board? Thank you, everyone. Sorry it took 2.5 hours.
I will make a motion to adjourn at 8:37 p.m.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Thank you
Night,
all.
everybody.
Thank
Aye.
you. Good night, Mark.